Welcome to the AI Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Professor Ashley Braganza. And in this episode, I want to explore the issues of compliance, governance, and regulation. And these issues manifest themselves in a range of decisions that business leaders, organizations have to take. Like, do we buy the AI system in, or do we build it ourselves? And depending on which route do we take, what are the risks? Questions around the role of governance and compliance within organizations, and how is AI going to impact on certain professions, such as the legal profession and the compliance professions? And who better than to explore these areas than to have Janine McKelvey. Janine is General Counsel for Data, AI, and Security for BT Group. So Janine, welcome to the AI Adoption Podcast. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, I wondered if you could share with listeners a little bit more about you, about your role in BT, and some of the highlights of what BT are doing in the area of AI.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Lovely to be here. So I am the General Counsel for Data and AI and Security at BT. And I have a team which comprises both of lawyers, but also compliance and risk and governance professionals. And it's our job to help BT navigate all of the evolved data and AI and security laws and make sure that we are building the right frameworks and guardrails and around our use of AI and data. Now, BT as a company is currently in about 180 countries. We operate not just in the telco space, but also in the technology space, and do a myriad of really interesting things, ranging from drones to running the 999 services in the country. We do a lot of cybersecurity work. And we are in healthcare, retail. We have, across all spectrums. So we have to be looking at what is happening in the AI space. We actually have more AI patents at the UK Patent Office than any other company, and that's in part thanks to all of the great scientists and engineers that we have. We have one of the largest science and innovation parks in the UK, which is the Dashiell Park, and so we are having to keep our thumb on the pulse of what's going on with AI. As a company, we are obviously looking at ways in which we can use it to add value to our customer journeys and how we operate as a company. We also are conscious that lots of other organizations are doing great stuff out there. And of course, we will look to partner with people as well in this space. And we are conscious that a lot of the technology that we use, the companies who produce that technology are increasingly making that technology AI enabled. So we have to be looking at this from a variety of different perspectives.
Thank you for that introduction to BT and providing that background. Now, I know from conversations that we've had earlier, Janine, your role covers a whole range of functions, and that you spend a lot of time looking at AI governance in particular. I just wondered if you could maybe reflect on, organizations that are considering adopting AI. What are some of the key governance and regulatory issues that those boards and those organizations need to consider?
Yeah. So that's very topical at the moment. And I think one of the first things you have to do within an organization is work out what is your AI strategy. Mm-hmm. How do you want to use AI? Not forgetting, of course, that there are, as I mentioned earlier, there's technology that you probably currently use where suddenly AI is becoming a part of that technology. Mm-hmm. So don't take your eye off of the tech you already have that's becoming AI enabled. And of course, there's now a lot of technology out there, or AI tools that are out there that are open source and that mm-hmm. employees can very easily access. So you may be looking at how is it that we want to use AI What do we want to use AI to help streamline, to make more effective, more efficient? But you've got to keep your eye on the fact that your staff might already be using AI in one form or another to help with their jobs. So you have to think about putting guardrails around the actual AI strategy that you evolve and develop for your business. How do we want to use AI to be more productive? But also think about what is the tech we already have that suddenly has got some technology that has been turned on that's AI enabled, and how are my staff currently possibly using AI? Do we want them using that technology? Do we want to have perhaps enterprise AI, which is more ring-fenced and has a walled garden around it, or are we happy for them to use technology that's out there on the web? All of that really needs to go into your AI strategy. And then you need to start thinking, well, based on the strategy, where all is AI touching my business? Is it touching it on the procurement side? Because are we buying it? Is it touching it in our innovation space? Are we developing AI ourselves? Are our engineers, developing their own chatbots? Are our staff developing chatbots? Are we using it? Are we deploying it within our business? Are our recruitment teams or our customer service desks using AI? And are we selling AI? Are we buying AI in and then wrapping it in our own products and selling it on? Are we developing AI and selling that? And I think those 4 quadrants, to buy, to sell, to develop, and to deploy, you have to sort of go into each one of them and work out, right, so where, as part of this AI strategy, are we using AI? Each one of them, you need to start thinking, well, who are the stakeholders involved in that quadrant? Is it the marketing team? Is it the procurement team? Is it the recruitment team? Is it the customer service team? Because they are all going to have to play a part in either helping build or comply with or manage the guardrails around how you use that AI. There are some key stakeholders that often are found in all of those quadrants. So it's often your architects within your business, and those are your sort of engineering architects and your data architects. Your engineers, your data engineers, your AI engineers, your data scientists could be involved as well. I think I've mentioned the procurement side, the marketing side. You've got to work out who are these stakeholders. And legal is often a stakeholder, as is security. They also play a part. And for big organizations, they will often have an AI function where they help to manage this, and a data governance function, which helps to manage the data. So you have good training data, good output from your AI. You need to make sure that the right people have a seat at the table, and that you've identified the right people depending on the quadrant. You also need to start keeping an inventory of your AI. So what AI are we buying in? What AI are we selling? What AI is potentially being used by different parts of the business? So an inventory is really important. Making sure you have the right skill sets in the business, because yes, it's technology. It's another form of technology, but it increasingly requires businesses to have some new skill sets. Now, that might mean you have to bring new skill sets in, or you need to upskill people across the business to be able to deal with the AI. Typically, I think when you look at any kind of technology that you are bringing into your business and deploying or developing, you think about the people, the processes, and the tooling you need to manage this. And so I think that's the question to keep asking. Do we have the right people with the right skills? Do we have the right processes to manage and track this? Do we have an inventory? Do we have an impact assessment tool where we can actually look at how we're going to use this AI? What is the impact on our staff, on our customers?
Yeah.
And a lot of companies would have gone through GDPR. They would have developed a privacy impact assessment. And what I'm seeing typically is a lot of the guardrails that were created under GDPR are now being leveraged and used for lots of other evolving technology and laws. So the impact assessment is a really good example of a process that one should have in place. And of course, the tools are being able to sort of track what you have, run assurance and checks. So
Yeah.
you have to build a framework that encompasses all of these sorts of things to really be able to leverage the AI safely in your organization.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point you're making, particularly in terms of safety, because really very often boards need the confidence when they're embarking down this route of adopting AI. And I guess in some ways what you've described is AI products and services almost having a supply chain or a procurement chain of their own. So what are your thoughts in terms of how companies can increase their confidence levels when looking at and analyzing their own AI supply chain?
So I think supply chains are going to be the toughest one to manage. What you are doing internally, I think, is a little bit easier, because if you're developing something internally, you should be able to get a sense of a lot more about what's going on in the black box and what data is being used and the input, the output. It's when you're buying stuff in, and you could be the third or fourth in a chain of the life cycle of this AI product. And in fact, the AI product might have bits and pieces come from lots of different vendors.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the most challenging space. But look, all companies are in the same boat here at the moment. And what I suggest companies start looking at is what questions are being asked as part of the normal due diligence exercise that's done by the procurement team when they bring new technology on board. Are you asking, AI brings some nuances. Are you asking the nuanced questions? Do you know what this AI has been trained on? Do you know if the AI will take data from your company and then send it back to the seller to reuse all of your company data to train the AI? So trying to get a sense of the risks during that procurement process is down to, I think, asking the right questions, making sure that you review the contracts really carefully. If necessary, that you are putting appropriate AI provisions into the contracts, which can be hard when you're dealing with the big technology vendors who have their standard T's and C's. And but you need to go through that exercise of really doing an impact assessment at that procurement stage on the technology that you're bringing in. And look, I would say you should be doing that on the stuff you're developing as well and deploying, because you need to understand, well, who could impact? What is this using to work? Where, does this not just is it taking our data? Is it doing something with our data? Is there a risk of infringing a third party's intellectual property rights? Could it infringe our third party intellectual property rights? Is there a risk of bias in the decision making? So that's quite important in things like recruitment processes or dealing with customer call centers. It's all of these sort of questions, the ethics around how some decision making takes place. There needs to be a bunch of questions that are asked at that procurement stage, and the impact of these things should be logged, because it might be a case of, we discover there's some issues, we build guardrails, we mitigate, but you know what, in 6 months' time, we need to come back and check, has anything changed here?
Yeah.
Is the AI being used slightly differently, or are different parts of the company using the AI, and we never sort of thought about how the AI may be used in that part. So, for example, I've seen this often in the recruitment side, where the call center side, where you might want to do testing on people's get a sense of how well they're answering calls, how quickly they're doing it, how friendly they are, and that is that's normally not. People get feedback on how they're doing in their job. That is normally not too alarming. But if you then use that information to start perhaps deciding what the evaluation is, or what their bonus might be, or their salary increase, there are additional questions you need to start asking. It could be the same AI, but it's being used for different purposes now. So that sort of those checks and balances need to be in place, and an impact assessment document with the right sort of questions that is geared to AI risk is a useful tool to manage that. I also think that that assessment, that impact assessment, linked to your inventory, so that you know what AI you have across the business, where it is coming from, who is using it. These things all link together, because if you ever have a customer or an employee or a regulator who comes to ask questions, you want to be able to show you know what AI you are using, you know who's using it, you have done impact assessment, and something else you should be thinking about in this journey is, if you are buying AI in from certain countries, or you're selling AI into certain countries, depending on the type of AI, is it in the healthcare sector, for example, there might be additional laws that you need to consider. It's not just the AI legislation. You have to think about security legislation, possibly healthcare legislation. If you're doing it in the banking sector, there's banking legislation. So doing that assessment and looking at it from all those lenses helps you to form a view on where the risks are, to mitigate them, build the guardrails, and feel like, okay, we can do this. We can do it safely if we have the following checks and balances in place.
Yeah, and you've mentioned the carrying out an impact assessment on a number of occasions, and I fully agree. I can see why doing an impact assessment is really important as part of the journey and part of the adoption of AI. But I guess in a company like BT, doing that impact assessment is going to require lots of different skills, lots of different people from different parts of the organization coming together, because you mentioned understanding legal requirements, HR requirements. People need to have an understanding of the processes that are going to be that these AI is going to be deployed into.
Yeah.
And in an organization like BT, clearly there are BT has got lots of resources. But what would you say to an organization that perhaps doesn't have that kind of resource pool, that has a significantly smaller resource pool, and quite frankly, possibly very limited internal capabilities? They may not have an IP, an intellectual property expert within the organization, or that level of kind of legal knowledge within the organization. How did these organizations then manage in terms of AI?
So I think one of the important points here is part of your AI strategy is to think about what you want to do with AI. And I suspect that we've moved from a place where everyone was brainstorming a million ideas that they could do with AI,
yes,
down to realizing, well, actually, we only have so much budget to spend on this.
yes.
So what is the stuff that's going to give us the most bang for our buck? And I think that's important in trying to work out how we then manage it. Because once you've landed on, you know what, these are our 3 or 4 big bets that we're going to run with AI. And it helps to crystallize in your mind. So where do these big bets lie? Is it in that development space? Is it in the buying space? And then to hone in to what are our risks in that space? Now, a number of the regulators have actually put out some very good guidance, and they write it for people who they write it so it doesn't have to only be read by lawyers. The ICO, so that's Information Commissioner's Office, puts out a lot of information and guidance. They also have a sandbox where companies can go and trial AI. But the other regulators, there are the CMA, Ofcom, and others are also putting out guidance around what they expect in terms of guardrail standards, how AI should be used. So I would say there is some free advice out there. The government, the UK government, has also put out basic principles that they expect to see. And then, of course, the other thing to do is consider speaking with law firms or consultancies who have specialists in the space, who are now, I think, 18 months to 2 years on, have a playbook that they have developed where they can say, right, these are the things you need to have in your company. They can help establish some of those things, and then you have to run with them. So I think it's about really deciding what is it we want to focus on with AI.
Yeah.
Um, and and then how much of this can we do internally to manage, and how much of this do we need possibly to get some external expertise? And I would say that expertise is not just around putting governance. There is expertise out there around how to use the AI to get maximum value. And that's ultimately what you want to do. You want to drive value and you want to do it safely. And I think, when I look at how companies have evolved from the brainstorming of 1,000 ideas to do with AI that they could do in their company, it's interesting to see how these ideas have narrowed down and people are realizing, right, it's not going to replace everybody, but there's certain activities that could be done by AI, and that will help to free up some of our people to do the more taxing work and maybe the more interesting, enjoyable work,
Yes.
because that's where AI is right now. It's not actually replacing people, although I did see a hospital just opened in China with, I think, 12 AI doctors, which I'm assuming is doing some kind of diagnosis. But I think we're still at that place where, yes, AI can help with a lot of things, but it
Yeah.
needs to still be managed, and actually it's most effective when it's doing sort of the monotonous stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, those are some of the ideas.
Well, thank you, because you've kind of taken me to the next area that I'd really like to explore, which is AI being a technology comes into organizations and impacts on their processes, impacts on their activities. And so when you think about, the basic functions in an organization, things like financial activities, financial processes, legal processes, compliance processes, what should some of the other industries be doing to support businesses adopt AI? I mean, what are some of the thoughts around what the financial services sector might be doing, or the legal profession should be doing to help companies adopt AI?
Well, I mean, I think what we're seeing happening is that there are companies out there who are developing technology, which which in the legal sector and in the financial sector, companies are adopting. So there's either they develop it yourself or buy it. And I suppose it depends which sector you're in as to what you think will work best and what you're looking for, what needs to get done.
Mm-hmm.
I think some companies, and I have seen a lot of law firms, are creating their own tools, but equally there are tools out there being developed by vendors. And I suppose you can make an argument for and against both, because the vendor tools are constantly being updated. They're learning from all the different clients that they have, and so they're improving. But they can be very expensive. Whereas if you create something in-house that's homegrown, you can keep developing it yourself, but you do have to ask yourself the question, for whichever organization, are we in the business of actually developing AI tools? And is this sustainable long term? But I think the competition is growing massively, and I think companies need to look at what is out there and keep their thumb on the pulse of things, to make sure that they are getting finding the best tool for their needs. And I think that is something else that companies need to ask themselves is, what do I want to achieve with this AI? And this is back to the strategy, the AI strategy. What do I need? Do I need to free up a lot of junior staff time that is spent doing due diligence exercises or creating NDAs, or, what can the AI help cover for me?
Sure.
And compliance, for example, is a great area where there's a certain amount of compliance work that I think over time, particularly the checking of things, where AI should be able to run across systems 24/7 and be able to do performance checks on things instead of individuals doing it manually. And because so much is becoming automated, the days of doing all compliance checking manually, I think, are over. But there are certain things where you still need a person to sit in a room and ask a bunch of questions and really scrutinize the answers and dig under the hood and then evaluate the responses and read the human emotion and listen to the story that is being told in a compliance setting. So I think it's about working out, right, where do we think we can get the most for our money in terms of, I think in particular, getting rid of the work that is not the most interesting and get people involved in the more interesting, more value-driven work.
Yeah, and I know from our earlier discussions and conversations that you're really passionate about, developing AI skills, AI capabilities.
Yeah.
What kinds of skills do you think, and what kind of capabilities do you think organizations need to be developing? And what should the government do, perhaps, to increase the availability of AI skills and capabilities?
I think we must make sure that our schools and our universities are not left behind,
Hmm.
because there are, if I think about, say, AI governance, for example, that is an understanding about AI governance is something that should be taught in more places than just a law school. I think it should be in the engineering departments and in the data science curriculums, and likewise at schools. I think we are getting better at this, but we were sort of late to the party, I think, in trying to educate children around online harms, and that is only becoming worse. So I think, well, I should say that with the technology available, the risks are becoming more significant. So I think we need to be teaching children about the risks associated with AI,
Hmm.
but at the same time teaching them to be able to go into professions, or at least be comfortable with AI,
Yeah.
and so that because the lawyers and the doctors and the and folk working in the financial sector and the teachers of the future, and this is probably true of almost every profession, will be touched by AI in one way or another. And it's the ones who don't understand how to use AI, and sort of shy away from the technology that are the ones who are most likely to be impacted in a negative way, because the jobs of the future will require an understanding of AI. It's just it's the same way as mobile phones, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
And certainly,
it's part of normal life now.
yes, and certainly, you've talked about, you mentioned including AI in, engineering, computer science, the legal programs and university degrees. We certainly, in the business school, we have started incorporating it even within the business and management programs, because you're absolutely right. This is something that is becoming so pervasive that no matter what job you take, you're going to have to need a real solid understanding of what these technologies will do. So I fully agree. And I guess leading on from the skills and the capabilities is the issue of, everyone's concerned that AI is going to come in and remove jobs. And clearly there are reports about, the numbers of jobs that are going to go, particularly in the legal profession, which I know your background is got a strong legal connections. What are your thoughts in terms of jobs being removed, particularly out of the legal and compliance professions? And what can legal firms, what can companies do about preparing for that?
It's interesting because I tend to think, as with all new technologies, it often creates new jobs.
Hmm.
And I think, sort of building on some of the conversation from earlier, I think it's the more mundane jobs that are going to go,
Okay.
or the more mundane parts of your job that are
Yeah.
going to go. And it's the people who can use AI, who will be actually moving ahead of their peers. Um, and I think those folk who are able to come into the sector, and so if you come into the legal sector, I think with a technology background, and you added law on top of that, wow, because that is, I think, one of the hot sort of skill set to pair with law now. And I actually think that the same will be true of finance. The same will be true of many professions.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely think it's the more boring stuff that we do, the stuff that you don't want to have to do every day. You do it perhaps at a stage in your career because there's some good grounding and training in that, but you want to move on to do the more exciting work. Now, the risk, I think, is junior people entering the profession who might have been trained on those sorts of pieces of work. And I'm thinking here, if I take the legal profession, for example, it is doing the NDAs and it is doing the due diligence exercises for big corporate deals and perhaps the contract extraction of, finding clauses in contracts. And there is a basic sort of training ground.
Yeah.
And we just need to be careful that we don't get AI doing all of that. And we kind of miss the fact that we need to take people out of university, put them through a training contract and make sure that that the basics that they're supposed to know, it's all there.
Yeah.
But I do think in the future, they will be doing the basics with the aid of AI.
Yeah. And Janine, in terms of the theme of the podcast, which is around AI adoption, I'm going to ask you a slightly unfair question. If I were to kind of almost take you out of this interview and put you into the boardroom of a large multinational organization, and the board turned to you and said, Janine, with all your experience and insights, what should be our top, 5 priorities in adopting AI? What would you say to that board?
Right. I think one of the first thing is don't take the position that it's too scary to bring AI into the company.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a huge risk of not experimenting with the AI and not putting time aside to think about how AI can make this company better.
Yeah.
Make the experience for our employees, our customers, make our products, our services better. I think real time has to be spent looking at that because that will help you develop what your strategy is going to be around AI. Sure. Where do we want to play in the AI space? And then from that, you build your guardrails around. I think you have to invest in your staff. That means you have to bring talent in or upskill your existing talent. And to do that, you have to let them play with AI.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. I remember talking to somebody at a conference where he said there's a particular tool on the market, which lots of companies are using. And she said, oh, I wish we could get this into our organization. But the powers that be don't want us to use it because they're too worried about staff using this tool and putting customer information into it. And I know because we use the tool. I said to her, but if you do a review of the tool, you will see where the guardrails need to be. You will, what we have done is create guardrails. We've done training for those staff who get to use the tool. We have made sure we went from a very sort of open source offering of the tool to a more enterprise one where it was ring fenced. We knew we'd looked at the contract. We'd made sure we had provisions in that made us comfortable. We made sure we had guidelines within the business. And the truth is that in the time since we started using that technology to today, we had staff who were far more comfortable with AI, who were using the AI to take meeting minutes and to create summaries of documents and to generate presentations. And these were skill sets that I was just seeing in the legal department. You would be seeing this in other parts of the business where they had adopted the same tool or different AI tooling. So things like writing code. Yes. Suddenly you're able to write a significant amount more code. And I think if you shy away because you're too scared about all the risks, then you don't actually embark upon, okay, let's really assess the tool. Let's see where the risks are. Let's see how we mitigate.
Yeah.
And everybody has to have a bit of a risk threshold and decide what is our acceptable risk around stuff. I think but you have to go through that exercise. There's a real risk of not adopting. So I would say that that's one of the things you've got to move away from. I would say you can't just focus on governance at the expense of value, and you can't just focus on value at the expense of governance. You have to have sort of a balanced situation going on where the folk responsible for the one side are talking to the folk responsible for the other side, and that they are collectively agreeing a path forward. After all, if the company doesn't exist, there will be no governance to work out. So
True.
you need to be able to have a balanced approach to all of this. And I always think that successful governance is governance that where people almost automatically they don't think about it so much as governance. So if you think about, when you get into a car and you put a seatbelt on and you turn on the light and you close you lock the door, and these are all just things you instinctively do, but they are all there for, there's an airbag for a reason, etc. But you do it and you're used to doing it and you understand why it's there, and you wouldn't want to drive on the road, and you wouldn't want other people driving on the road without brakes in the car, without lights, etc.
Yes.
So you should be trying to build governance around your AI, which doesn't feel like you have to put 20 seatbelts on every time you get in the car, and you don't have to screw the lights in and pump the airbag before you leave. That's the wrong kind of governance.
Yes.
But you want to know that there are brakes, and in fact, the fact that you put brakes in your governance means that you can drive fast because you can press on the brakes.
True.
And the fact that other cars have got brakes does the same. So that I often use that analogy to say build good governance, but governance that helps you actually move faster. So that you've got to find that sweet spot. I think you've got to keep a check on where you are as well in developing that sweet spot around sort of industry average and maturity, because the truth is we are at the beginning of a lot of AI and AI governance, and we've got all of these laws that are coming at us from all over the world, particularly if you are operating or selling products or processes into other jurisdictions. We know we're kind of learning a little bit as we go, and we're having to, if you work internationally, there's a lot going on at the moment in different jurisdictions around laws impacting security, cybersecurity in particular, around AI, around data. And so I think what you can't do is try and build for perfection on every piece of legislation, but very often there are common themes running through legislation in different territories, and there are often guides coming out from different industry sectors. So you'll have things like NIST, which is on the security side, and you'll have ISO standards, and making sure that as you build governance that might have to reach into lots of different territories, you're at least building for some of the industry standards. And I think that is helpful. And then you need to check how you are doing maturity-wise against these things. And I think that maturity index will evolve over time. We're going to learn a lot on the way. And I would leverage GDPR. Whatever you did for GDPR, you should be leveraging now when you're looking at AI. I would invest in skills and training and tools that help you to deliver what you have committed to in your AI strategy.
Sure.
You don't need to bring in all these skill sets and tools for 100 things if you're actually only focusing on 10. So I probably would think about it that way.
Janine, you've covered an awful lot of ground. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the AI Adoption podcast. I really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ashley. Thank you for having me.